Good morning. Good afternoon. Yeah, I woke up this morning to the very, from my perspective, deadly news about the congressional vote in the U.S. House of Representatives last night, where they put into action the resolution, that vote that they took so many months ago, that will do real damage here in Minnesota. When we look at that proposal, estimates suggest that those making more than $1 million a year will get a tax break of $90,000. Those at the very bottom of the income scale will get a cold tax break of $90. $90,000 for the richest, $90 for the poorest. More than 253,000 Minnesotans stand to lose coverage under this proposal. Minnesota stands to lose more than $500 million a year, dollars that go to people's health care and food support, for a tax break that benefits the wealthy the most. It is deeply disturbing for me, very disgusting, and it is what we are seeing in Republicans across the country, including here in Minnesota, where we favor wealthy corporations, wealthy people at the expense of the poor, the sick, people with disabilities, and our seniors. Those are the people who will bear the brunt of this decision, and I am deeply disappointed in our Republican members of Congress. This passed by one vote in the U.S. House, any one of them. Representative Emmer, with whom I served, Representative Finstead, with whom I served, Representative Fischbach, with whom I served, Representative Stauber. Any one of them could have made a different decision and taken up the fight for the people of Minnesota. That's the news we woke up to today, and I know we in Minnesota have a different set of values, and we have incredibly hard work to do if we want to preserve a healthcare system that actually functions across the state, where hospitals in rural places are able to serve people, where people with chronic conditions can get care close to their own homes, where there's continuity of care and preventative care. We have a real challenge in front of us, and that is why I'm so urgently ready to wrap up this budget. We need to get this budget done. We need to show Minnesotans that we're able to think of them in terms of their humanness, of their lives, and put a budget together that balances out in the tails, that creates structural balance in the future, but preserves their way of life, their healthcare system, our public schools, workers' rights, and working families' absolute ability to live the life of their choosing. That's what's at stake in this budget. It is why we are working so hard to make sure that we get it done. And with that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
How much does because you talked a lot about the federal budget, how much does that complicate what you're doing in the next few days before a special session? Don't you have to account for that?
So this proposal, now voted on by the U.S. House of Representatives, has to be reconciled with the U.S. Senate. I understand that they may put this into place by July the 4th, which is why I have said over and over, we will likely be back later this summer or this fall to reconcile the damage that they're doing to Minnesota's budget, to Minnesota's healthcare system, and to Minnesotans' lives. But right now, we have to do this job. We have to do this job and do it well so that we have a stably balanced budget so we can consider what comes next. And I'm gonna, when we are done with this session, and we will be done soon, I hope, I'm gonna get a little sleep, and then I'm gonna be calling my colleagues together so that we are able to anticipate what's coming and start to think about what it means for Minnesotans and what we can do about it.
As far as the progress has gone since Monday night, you guys had a meeting with working groups last night. How is that going? Can you tell us about any of the major holdups that are maybe cleared up since Monday night?
I am making the turn from the end of session into the working groups is never very easy. And most of the working groups are the result of the conference committees that were already underway. Two had to come together subsequently, one on education, one on taxes. They're both doing their work. I think education, taxes, human services, and the jobs committee will all have public meetings today. On Tuesday, we met with the working groups. There were some sticking points, but we've mostly ironed those out. And I'm really proud of that. We didn't do a lot of work there, but to help understand what the problems are and then ask the committee members to go back and resolve those differences. And they are doing that. And you can see bills, big bills, starting to close up And I expect that we will meet later today with the tax committee and with the education committee to understand where they are. They needed a little extra time because they got started a little bit later than the rest of them. But we are making slow and steady progress, ironing out our differences in a way that I hope means that we'll be able to get to work with a special session soon.
There seemed to be so much optimism that, hey, we could do a one-day special session before Memorial Day. What happened? Because it seems like now you're talking next week. What happened to the original
I think
projections?
those last days of the session where the conference committees were working, but there were added conditions over and over again, slowed down the work of the conference committees that were closed. I continue to point to higher education as a really good example. And the chair on the Republican side in the House is still demanding a Regents Convention, the last I heard, before they will sign their bill, which is all done. The bill's all done, everybody agrees, the budget's balanced. The Regents is not a budget question. That's got to go away. They got to set that aside and finish up the budget. The budget has always been our top priority, and we have to get it done. So those last days where new conditions were being added and people were getting a little recalcitrant in terms of getting the work done, we had to, I hope everybody got a little sleep, and they're now moving forward so that we're able to get these done.
Can we read anything into the committees that are having public meetings? Does that mean they're making progress, or are we going to actually see some give and take in these meetings?
I would expect that you're going to see some give and take. Every committee's in a different place. I think it is important, and I've instructed our members, our chairs, to hold public meetings. They know that it is important for the public. It's important for Minnesotans. It's a value of mine as well. So you will see that happen as long as we've got our House counterparts coming along with us.
Do you expect these working groups to meet into next week potentially, or do you think they can wrap up before then?
Well, I hope that we get everything wrapped up here before the weekend. It would be nice if people were able to get a little bit of sleep before we come back into a special session, knock on wood again, next week. But this is a really human endeavor, and I think it's really important to remember that. Like, we are making decisions that impact the lives of people, impact our communities, impact our schools, impact our businesses. It is a human endeavor, and we are humans as well. We are debating over things that we care deeply about, we disagree strongly over, and people have to work through that and sometimes give things up that they care a lot about. There's a little grief that comes with that, and there's anger that comes with that. We're experiencing all of those emotions right now, and still we know it is our job to finish the work, and so it takes sometimes a little bit of time. There was a member who needed to leave and go back home for a little while yesterday just to take a pause. And I respect and admire that, actually recognizing that, because we can't do the best work that we're intending to do if we're really caught up in a set of emotions that get in the way.
It sounds like mid next week for a special session at the earliest.
It's really the call of the governor, as we all know, but people are working really hard to finish up the work in order to get that special session called and on its way.
But you've talked, you met with him last night, right? You guys probably had to be frank about you can't be called, you have to convey to him when the work is done to call the special session, right? And that looks like it's going to be next week.
It is the case that we are talking through together every day, maybe more than once a day, the status of the conference committees, what's happening there, where people are getting stuck. And if they're getting stuck in a way that they can't resolve it, then we're talking with them in person so that we can help unstick some things. So yes, we are talking together. It is clear we're not going to have a special session by the end of this week because that's tomorrow. But I hope that in the work of today, and people are working really hard today, and hopefully tomorrow we're able to button these things up and get going next week.
Sorry, which groups have the most ground to cover?
I think Health and Human Services is always one of the hardest bills to balance, and I want to give a shout out to Melissa Wickland, who is a workhorse in the most quiet and organized way you could ever imagine. She's got 3 separate jurisdictions that she's dealing with, and they are making real progress there. So it's a lot of work, but they are not really getting stuck. K-12 education, another area that people care deeply about, and I think that they are narrowing in on a conclusion in terms of the spreadsheet. It's just taken them some time to work through it. I would expect that we are going to see an outcome in transportation where there were differences between the House Democrats and the House Republicans and the Senate Democrats. And this is one of the features of the tied session that is, now really in full view for all of us. You would expect that the House conferees would come in together united. Like we passed a bill and we're united and we're going to fight for our position. But instead the House is coming in like a two-headed monster. The Democrats have a perspective and they're offering spreadsheets, and the Republicans have a perspective and they're offering spreadsheets, and then the Senate is in a place of having to try and mediate those differences and offer their own perspective. So it's been more challenging than usual to be able to sew all of that together. And I want to give a big shout out to Senator Scott Dibble, who is a senior member of our caucus, a deeply, profoundly expert senator on the issue of transportation. And he is, I think, navigating and guiding newer members who don't have as much experience as he does to get a transportation bill put into place.
Any progress on immigrant health care? That has been a big source of controversy.
So I continue to work with my colleagues to consider the ways in which we move forward on that issue. But I want to call our attention back to the news that we got this morning. We are living at a time in America where we have a president and a Republican Congress who are very, very eager to sever people from their health care coverage, cut deeply healthcare reimbursements that'll hurt hospitals and clinics across the state of Minnesota. What we have seen in the Republicans here is the same thing. It's the same posture. They just picked a different population and said, you don't get it anymore. So I have been talking with my colleagues for months. One of the reasons we did those Medicaid town halls over the interim is because we could see this coming. And Minnesota has a big question in front of it about what we mean when we say we provide health care for people. I'm a nurse. I have a code of ethics by which I live. I'm licensed. I have a responsibility. If someone needs my care, I'm going to give it. That is the right set of values. The Congress is taking a different course, and we together, when we say we care about each other and we care for each other, are going to have a really hard challenge in front of us, Tom.
So it sounds like that is not resolved. That issue is not resolved, it sounds like.
I think that issue is among the many issues that we are going to deal with over the course of the next number of months.
Does it
You
still have to
say
be
that you
this?
see it coming, but is there anything in the human services budget that accounts for this anticipated decrease in federal money? It looks like there's not.
I am really, I want to call human services, health and human services. So I think that Melissa Wickland and Robert Bierman and Jeff Backer are putting together an important bill that does the thing that we have been talking about all session. We could see the Congress coming. We could see the Congress coming with a butcher knife to do deep cuts in health care. How do we respond to that? How do we fortify and reinforce the system? So when we think about directed payments to hospitals, grabbing some federal money, using a tool that many, many states have to improve reimbursements, using that same tool when we think about mental health care and outpatient services, making sure that the hospitals, our clinics are getting a little more resource so they are stably able to care for an increasing population of uninsured people, is the work that is happening in that committee, not because of what the Republicans demanded in this agreement, but because we know the Republican Congress and Donald Trump were going to take this action.
You still think the rollback of Minnesota Care for Undocumented Immigrants needs to be a standalone bill? You said that on Monday.
I do.
And Speaker Damith said she won't go for that. So is that sounds like a sticking point.
It is a sticking point, but if they want to pass that policy, and they do, it's their priority, it's got to be a standalone bill, period.
In the taxes working group, there was dispute about the sales tax exemption for data centers, and it sounds like there's been a spin-off working group just on that issue. What happened there? Where do you stand on the sales tax exemption?
So there are a number of things happening around data centers and a wide variety of perspectives on this issue. We have members who are concerned about environmental impacts, impacts on water, impacts on land and zoning, impacts on future tax resources. And there has been, as I have not been a part of this, but there have been a group of members that have been meeting for a couple of months talking through those issues, separate from the tax committee. So I am going to meet with Ann Russ this afternoon, our tax chair, to understand where they stand right now as they've been negotiating, and I can come back to that question. But I think the issue of data centers is one that has really captivated this legislature this year. And we want to make sure if data centers are building here in the state of Minnesota, and there are a lot of people who work and build and are very excited about data centers, and I understand that it is good jobs for people, especially electricians and others. I understand that, but we should also make sure that we're striking a good deal here in the state of Minnesota, and we're protecting our natural resources, our land, our water, et cetera.
These bills will not technically be conference committee reports, so they are amendable. Are you going to try to get an agreement where your members will not try to amend these bills? That could happen in the House or the Senate.
So I have not, I have been a party to many special sessions, and it is the practice that once we have agreed on the legislation, that we also then set the terms of the special session. And usually that is done before the governor calls the special session. So I anticipate that we would agree that none of these are amendable, that we have agreed together as a legislature, we've reached a conclusion, and our job is now to pass that through and make it law.
So can you just reiterate which ones maybe are, you talked about higher ed is done except for the regents of it all.
Yeah.
But I think Senator Klein yesterday posted on Instagram that the commerce was done.
Yeah.
Are there any others that are done, and will those be posted anywhere? I haven't seen the commerce posted anywhere.
Well, so I think they are still ironing out one small matter regarding reinsurance, within the commerce area. So I think they have signed their spreadsheet, but there's still a little language work being done on the question of reinsurance. We have jobs that I understand is done and about ready to sign their spreadsheet, jobs and labor. They're going to have a public hearing later today. HS is the same, human services is the same thing. K-12 is making good progress. Say that again. The Environment Committee, who's done a lot of work, they have finally reached a conclusion as well. So they're coming.
Why aren't all the meetings public? That's obviously been something a lot of us have reported on this week.
Yeah, I prefer public meetings. I always have, and the legislature over the last decade or so has moved further and further away from public conference committee meetings. And I've been pushing my caucus that we should take them back in public. It's important. I think that people came out of Monday night and came in Tuesday and went right back to work. And they are ironing out some of the more thorny issues, and often that is the work that happens in a one-to-one or smaller groups of the conference committee members, so they can reach a conclusion and then bring that back to the larger group. That's what's happening. But I've instructed everybody to hold a public meeting, and you see as they're popping up today, you'll see them again tomorrow as well.
Who was kind of making those decisions as to whether the meeting should be public or private yesterday and Tuesday?
So we have been pressing our members to hold public meetings, and I can't speak to what the House has decided. I think that it is the case that people were already working. They are wrestling with some of the harder issues, so they were working to iron out those differences. And we, as I said, we've instructed our members to hold public meetings.
What's the role that Senate Republicans are going to play in the rest of this? Obviously, as the minority caucus, they have to be there for suspending rules, maybe bonding, those sorts of things.
Yep. Mark Johnson and I continue to talk together. He's been a part of the discussions as we've come back together post May 19th. We're going to have to pass these bills together. So we'll continue to work together to get the work of the people of Minnesota finished.
Are legislators being paid and / also getting per diems and lodging when they're in the interim between a regular session and a special, or does that only restart when the official special session begins?
So I know that there are people who come from rural places, and they have, right now, I think they still have their lodging. I shouldn't answer. I should get you the information because it's been a little while since I've been in the rules. So how about if I just get you the information rather than try and...
Is it fair to say if you reach an agreement by tomorrow on all these bills, it would be miraculous, but it could happen. You're not going to make the revisor's office work all Memorial Day weekend to get ready for a special session Tuesday or Wednesday. I imagine that would wait till next week.
Good news here. Many of the committees are sending their work to the revisor as they're closing things up. So they are processing the work as we are doing it. And you've heard me say this many times, right? I think we need to be well rested. We need to, eat a decent meal in order to be good at our work. That's true for our staff as well. And so no, I don't have any intention to ask the revisor's office or others to work the whole Memorial Day weekend in order to get our work done. But they are working as they do with skill and diligence to process the work that we're creating.
Are the working groups working this weekend?
Pardon me?
Are the working groups meeting this weekend?
I would imagine if they haven't finished their work by tomorrow, they're going to be working on the weekend. And I was supposed to go to the cabin this weekend, and I'm not, to make sure we get our stuff done.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
It's really good to see you.
Senator Johnson.